A man wrote me in April, and I'm going to read it near enough word for word. He took delivery of a rifle and found it damaged. Not worn, damaged, out of the box. He wrote the company that built it. Then he wrote again. He never got an answer, and he still hasn't. That's the whole message. He never asked me for anything. At the end of a video this spring, I asked one question. What rifle do you regret buying? I figured on 40 answers. 300 and some came back, and I've spent 9 days going through them with a pencil, tallying names the way I used to tally what men were carrying at a check station. 4 regrets, worst to first, then the 3 they'd buy again, because about half of them told me that too, and I never asked. Here's the filter, and it doesn't move. Did the gun do what the tag said it would? In weather? Over years? And not one afternoon at a bench? And would the man spend that money again? What did it cost him somewhere else? Bought again or never again? What it promised or what it did? One of my own rifles turns up on the second list, and I'll say so when we get there. Number 4, and this is where I lose a third of you. Savage. The Model 110's been in production since 1958, and there's a reason. Nicholas Brewer's barrel nut and floating bolt head are why a Savage shoots the way it does for the money. Headspace set right at the factory, every time. What men wrote me was quality control that's hit or miss, rough actions, and stocks they didn't like. Here's the honest qualifier. Near about all of it landed on the budget end. The men shooting dearer ones defended them hard. Aftermarket support's real, and a good one will shoot with anything here. That's the crack, though. A rifle you might get a good one of isn't a rifle. That's a coin toss with your money. 6 to 700 Street. A 110 was under $200 when I was writing tags. Now, you're entitled to ask who's saying that. I'm Wendell Coffey, 30 years a state wildlife officer in the upper East Tennessee districts and the mountain country along the state line. I didn't look at guns on a bench. I looked at them in weather, at the end of a season, in the hands of men who'd carried them hard. The $400 ones, the $4,000 ones, the one a man's daddy handed him. Nobody's ever sent me a gun. I've never had a sponsor. I sold guns for a living once, 1972 to 1979, and quit because I couldn't keep talking people into guns they didn't need. At least a Savage was cheap when it let a man down. The next one wasn't even that. Number 3, Radical Firearms. The AR is not mine. I've fired them. I don't have the repetitions, and I'm not going to guess at it for you. So I handed this to Caleb, my grandson, to read the complaints back and explain what I didn't follow. Damaged rifles shipped, and then not one email answered. Cases sticking in the chamber before a man could get through a magazine. Burrs on a handguard, stripped screws, a scratched barrel. Credit where it's owed. They're cheap, and Caleb tells me they build a great deal of other people's parts, and build those fine. Here's the break. It isn't the gun, it's the quiet afterward. A company that won't answer a man's email has told him what it thinks of him, and no price makes up for that. A gun that comes home wrong is a bad week. From a company that won't pick up, it's a bad year. 7 to 900 complete. Let me say one thing, then I'll leave it be. Everything I learned writing price tags for 7 years, and everything 30 years of field checks taught me after, is in a book. It's called The Gun You Think You Know. There's a part in it on buying right that's this exact problem. How the number on the tag gets built, what a spiff is buying when a man steers you, and a 60-second check you can run on a used gun standing at the counter. There's a square on your screen. Point your telephone at it if you want it. That's all. Now, the same complaint as the last one, with a number on it that stings worse. Number 2, Fierce. Good-looking rifle. I'll say that first because it's true, and they can build a good one. Their carbon barrels and their titanium actions are real work, not decoration. What came back was inconsistent accuracy, quality control, and men who called for help and got very little. At that money, a man isn't buying a chance. He's buying certainty, and that's the thing he didn't get. There was one from May. He paid a little over $3,000 because the price felt like proof, then found out what was inside it. Sold it at a loss. I'll tell this next part against myself because I've been on the other end of it. Behind that counter, I had sales targets and a spiff on certain brands, and I knew what that money was buying. I put a man into a rifle he regretted, and I knew while I was doing it. That's why I walked out in 1979. So when a fellow writes me somebody talked him into a $3,000 rifle, I don't think he was gullible. I know that pitch from the inside. I was paid to make it, 2 to 3,000 depending. And before I give you number one, I want to name what's actually doing this to people, because it isn't buyers being stupid. A name is cheaper to build than a barrel. It costs a company very little to make you feel a certain way about a rifle, and a great deal to make the rifle, and the ones in trouble worked out which a man checks first. Then the price gets sold as the proof. 3,000 must mean it's good, and a man who paid 3,000 will defend it in the comments, because he paid 3,000. None of that is weather. Somebody decided it, usually about money, and there's a date on it. I had a man in my district who killed a deer every fall for 30 years with a pump gun so worn the bluing was gone off the receiver. He never sent anything back to anybody. Number one, Christensen Arms. I'll give them their due. Carbon fiber barrels and light mountain rifles. Early to it when nobody else was. But the tally isn't close. More men named Christensen than named everybody else combined, and the complaints ran everywhere at once. Accuracy that wandered, quality control, men who got nowhere with customer service. 16 to 3,000, and a good many had waited months on a rifle already paid for. I've never fired one, and I want that on the record. I know a fellow at church whose boy has one that shoots beautifully. Here's the thing, every company turns out a bad rifle eventually. Something gets past somebody on a Friday. The question isn't whether it happens. It's whether it's the exception or the arrangement. Quick on the rest, because a few came up too often to leave out. Proprietary rails and operating systems on rifles men otherwise loved. You buy the gun and then can't buy a thing for it. A Mini, 1.4 that opened up once the barrel warmed. A receiver cracked at 500 rounds. And guns bought because they looked like something that sat in the safe getting shot twice a year till the man traded them off and took the loss. All right, the three they'd buy again. I'll say this much about the one at the top. It isn't American. It isn't pretty. It isn't expensive. It isn't the one their granddads carried. It breaks about everything this business has been telling men for 30 years about what a rifle ought to cost, and it beat every other name put together. Don't jump ahead. If you jump, you'll get the name and miss the reason, and the reason's the only part worth your evening. Number three, Seekins, priced up there and not as well known, Idaho outfit, and they were building precision parts before they were building rifles, which shows in the machine work. What men said was you get near enough a semi-custom rifle for what a factory rifle costs, and theirs shot the way it was promised to. Nobody wrote me about waiting on customer service, and after the first half of this list, that's worth saying out loud. 2,000 to 2,500. It clears the first half of the filter without an argument. It strains on the second because there's a rifle at a third of the money men trust is hard. Number two, Ruger. I own two. I'll tell you plain. The 10/22 I paid $98 for. In 1988 is unremarkable, and I've said so for years. What came back was inexpensive, reliable, rugged, shoots well for what it is, 400 to 600 for an American, which is the reason a great many first rifles in this country are Rugers. And one story worth more than the rest. A man's rifle wouldn't shoot, he sent it back, and Ruger made it right without an argument. That's the second prong passing. It isn't that a gun never fails, it's what the company does afterward. I'm holding the accuracy business for number one. It's on my bench right now. Number one, Tikka. Remember what these men are. Mostly American hunters with American rifles in the safe. And the rifle they'd buy again is Finnish, wears a plastic stock, and costs less than 3 of the 4 they regret. More men praised it than everything else combined, and I never asked about good ones. You already know. If you've been around this at all, you had it 30 seconds ago. You're right, and I'm not going to string you along. Sacco's been building at Riihimäki since 1918. The T3X landed in 2016. 6.5 pounds unscoped, cold, hammer-forged barrel, and men wrote me about groups under an inch out of the box with factory ammunition, which isn't a thing men write down unless it surprised them. I bought a T3X light in 308 in 2014 at 65 because my eyes were gone and it takes glass properly and a man that age can carry it up a ridge. I take it over the prettier American rifle in my safe for hunting, and I'm not going to apologize. It's got flaws, same as the others. The magazine holds 3, which feels thin to a man raised on 5, and the American aftermarket for stocks and triggers is thin next to a Remington 700. The plastic on the standard stock flexes if you rest it wrong on a pack. 7 to 800 Street. I know some of you wanted a different name here. Some days I do too. One more honest thing before I let you go. Go back through that stack and near about every regret in it is a rifle the man never got good with. The rifle is the cheapest part of this. Practice beats the name on the barrel and always has, and the animal has never once known what you carried. I reload Tuesday nights, have for 40 years. If I could keep 3, it'd be the Model 70 Featherweight in 30 to 06. I paid $189 for in 1974 and have never had fail me. The Tikka, because my eyes are what they are, and Doyle Rayner's Marlin 336 in 35 Remington. Ugly gun. Somebody refinished the stock badly in about 1970. Iron sights. Not for sale at any number. Not because they're impressive. Because they're proven. Right for the work. And the kind of thing a man hands on. Last thing, then I'm done. There's a part of that book about what happens after 2 words get said at a counter by a man who doesn't know what he's holding, and they cost families more than anything I know of. Doyle's safe went to a shop for 1 flat number. 41 years, 1 number. That part's in there so it doesn't happen to yours. Same square bottom of the screen. That's all. Your turn. Tell me the one you regret, not just the name, what it cost you, and where that gun is now. Sold, traded, or sitting in the back of the safe where you don't have to look at it. No judgment. Don't argue with a man over a name on a barrel. And tell me if I've got this wrong. Tell me what the tally missed that you were there for. Remington after the ownership change, the Marlins built in those years, Weatherby. None of the 3 showed up the way I expected. I read every last one of them. Next time, the other side of this. The gunsmen swore they'd never sell. And what happens to them the week after the man who loved them is gone? That one's going to start a bigger argument than this one. Buy what's proven, not what reads well. All right.